Serious acrimony has now broken out among conservatives about whether to vote for Donald Trump. As I've made clear, as of now, I have no intention of voting for Trump. He's personally unpalatable, of course. He's a serial adulterer who brags about sleeping with married women and says he doesn't repent. He's an extreme narcissist with delusion of grandeur. He's not conservative. He thinks Planned Parenthood does great work. He doesn't have coherent foreign policy. He wants to leave entitlement programs in place. He supports tariffs and government subsidies. He doesn't care if Republicans lose the Senate. He has nothing to say about religious freedom for business owners, and that's just the start. He's volatile and he's nasty. He's mocked prisoners of war and disabled journalists and compared his own sacrifices to those of Gold Star families and gone soft on the KKK. He lies constantly about nearly everything. Just as importantly, Trump is doing serious brand damage to conservatism. He's poisoning the well of female voters, look at the polls, and minorities and young people. Many ardent conservatives have been co-opted into lying for him and perverting their own conservatism in order to stop Hillary Clinton. If Trump wins, he'll turn conservatism into Trumpism. If he loses and conservatives go along for the ride, he'll have sunk conservatism for an entire generation of voters. Not supporting Trump is a perfectly defensible position, but, it is a tough call. On the other hand, I totally understand and I fully sympathize with people who say they have to hold their nose and vote for Trump in order to stop Hillary. She will be a full-scale disaster. She'll appoint the 5th Supreme Court Justice to gut the First and Second Amendments. She will cripple our military. She'll cram down tax increases. She'll use the regulatory infrastructure to snap the knees of American industry and conduct basically raids against religious people. Choosing Trump over Hillary is an absolutely perfectly defensible position, but it is a tough call. Every morning these days, I really do, this is true. I ask myself the same question. Which is more costly to America? A possible loss of conservatism to Trumpism, or another 4 years of Hillary Clinton, another 4 years of Hillary Clinton's radical destruction, which could deal the death blow to America's freedoms? It's a very serious question, and good people are going to come down on both sides of it. I myself have felt compelled to come down on both sides of it at one time or another. But acknowledging that the choice isn't easy seems like a stretch for a lot of commentators. Some people insist that if you forego the Trump train, that makes you a traitor. In order to reach that conclusion, they either ignore Trump's foibles or they lie about what a wonderful guy, what a wonderful conservative he is. Some people on the other side, they insist that if you jump on the Trump train, that makes you a traitor. In order to reach that conclusion, some of them downplay Clinton's evils or exaggerate Trump's riskiness. Here's what does make you a traitor to conservatism. If you lie for Trump or you lie to your audience that he's a serious conservative. Lying isn't just non-conservative, it's actually immoral. But neither voting for Trump nor refusing to vote for Trump makes you a traitor to conservatism. Nobody knows the answer to the hypothetical I pose to myself each morning because nobody has a crystal ball. We don't know how bad things will be under Trump. We don't know how bad things will be under Clinton. We don't know what will happen to the future of the conservative movement. But one thing is certain. If we don't recognize that the choice is tough, thanks to Trump's utterly incomprehensible foolishness and vitriol and Hillary Clinton's radical leftist corruption, we're not taking the question seriously enough. More importantly, we're destined to go to war with our own ideological allies after the election is over, and there's no need for that war. Our war should be on behalf of conservatism. Trump has divided conservatives on the proper tactics in this election, but once November 9th hits, we're all on the same page again. We either have to stop leftist policies from President Trump or from President Clinton. We'll need to be allies. The first step should be recognizing the goodwill of people who fight alongside us, even if we don't make the same risk calculations with regard to a conservative future. I'm Ben Shapiro. This is The Ben Shapiro Show. Okay, so it turns out there's been some news. There are things to talk about today. So we'll launch right off the bat. This today will be an epic episode of Good Trump, Bad Trump.
Good Trump, bad Trump, which one will we get today?
All right, thank you to, of course, Brandon Snipes for providing us the theme for Good Trump, Bad Trump. Which one will it be today? Well, there is actually plenty of good Trump. There actually is plenty of good Trump, and I mean really good Trump. He gave, I thought, the best speech of his entire career, the best speech of his political campaign last night. I thought it was truly a stellar speech. I'm not exaggerating. I thought his speech last night was great. I thought it was great. I have to start, of course, we're on Facebook Live, so that means I have to front load the material that people are tuning in for today, and that, of course, is the announcement that Trump is shaking up his campaign. And here's where we get bad Trump. Ooh, sad. Okay, so let's begin with the campaign shakeup today. So here's what we know about the campaign shakeup today. Stephen K. Bannon, the former chairman of Breitbart News, and by former I mean like from 30 seconds ago, he is now going to be the new Trump campaign chairman. The new Trump campaign manager is a gal named Kellyanne Conway. Kellyanne Conway used to be the kind of the mouthpiece for the Mercer family. The Mercer family are some of the bigger Republican donors in politics. I think they were the single largest political donor in this election cycle. They gave a bunch of money to Cruz, and now they're going to give a bunch of money to Trump. She used to be the mouthpiece for them. Now she's moving over to the Trump campaign. Here's what you need to know about all of this. So first, I'm going to try and remove myself, okay? It's tough for me. I'll admit it freely and openly. I think that Steve Bannon is one of the worst people I know. I think Steve Bannon is a bad guy. I think he's vicious. I think he's aggressive. I think he's self-aggrandizing. I think he has no interest in principle. I think he has interest only in his personal power. Okay, but I'm going to try and put that aside. Is this a good pick for the Trump campaign? So, if the last 2 days are an indicator of what Bannon can do, it's not just a good pick for Trump. It's actually a very good pick for Trump. The last 2 days have been good Trump. The last 2 days are what people thought they were getting in the primaries with Donald Trump. The last 2 days have been Trump speaking very, very well on ISIS and then speaking very, very well on crime. And we'll get to all that in a minute. It's also prevented Trump from making a lot of big boo-boos, right? A lot of the big boo-boos that Trump usually makes. I mean, by this point, he usually has stuck his foot up his butt in some way or another. He hasn't done that for 48 hours. I know that our standards have lowered to the point where it's a big shock when a 70-year-old man doesn't step in a pile of crap for 48 hours. But that is where our standards are. He hasn't for 48 hours, and he's given a couple of actually very good speeches. He's actually done a couple of very good things. Here's where Steve's skill set comes to bear with Trump. So Steve is good at handling talent. He's handled Sarah Palin before. He's dealt with Michelle Bachmann before. He was friendly with Andrew Breitbart, of course. What he does with talent is he tends to double them down. He tries to tell talent that they need to be more them. They need to be more authentically them. With Trump, that's a better tactic than trying to rein him in and trying to turn him into Mitt Romney. He's never going to be Mitt Romney, nor should he want to be Mitt Romney. He's not capable of that. So what Bannon will do is he'll double Trump down. That has its good aspects. It also has its bad aspects. The good aspects are when Trump is on, like he has been the last couple of days, it's quite good, even if I disagree with him on a lot of stuff. The bad aspect is that Trump is, as I've said before, a Category 5 turd tornado. Every so often, he's liable to just blow through town and wreck everything and leave dead people in his wake. I mean, it's that bad. I don't think that Steve is capable of stopping the turd tornado that is Trump, but there are some ancillary points to be made here about conservative media and about the future of the conservative movement that I think are more important than Bannon's specific impact on the Trump campaign. As I say, I think he could have maybe a beneficial impact on the Trump campaign. So first, let me explain to you who Steve Bannon is and why I know Steve Bannon. So I've known Steve Bannon longer than I was actually at Breitbart, and Steve knows me longer than he was at Breitbart, actually. So Steve Bannon turned Breitbart News into Trump's personal Pravda. To understand what this means, I was friends with Andrew Breitbart since the time I was 17 years old. I worked very, very closely with Andrew Breitbart on a number of different projects for many, many years before he hired me in 2012. We were very friendly. We used to IM and speak all the time. He's been over at my parents' house for dinner. I mean, Andrew and I were good friends. Breitbart News was designed to be a fighting media site. That's what it was designed to do. It was designed to fight bullies. And under the auspices of Steve Bannon, as he became more and more tied to Trump, it became simply a Trump Pravda site. You remember back in March, I quit Breitbart over the incident with Michelle Fields. Now, a lot of people think that incident was exaggerated, nothing really that bad happened, but that doesn't matter, okay? The part of the story that actually matters is that Michelle Fields was indeed grabbed by Corey Lewandowski, and Breitbart basically gaslit her. Breitbart decided that they were going to come out in favor of Trump and say not that nothing bad had happened, but that she'd never even been grabbed, that she was basically making it up, it never happened, Corey Lewandowski hadn't grabbed her, and then you spread that rumor everywhere. Undercut your own reporter, smear your own reporter is basically crazy in order to get in closer with Trump. I quit over that, and here is the statement that I issued. What I said was, Andrew Breitbart built his life and career on one mission, fight the bullies. But Andrew's life mission has been betrayed. Indeed, Breitbart News, under the chairmanship of Steve Bannon, has put a stake through the heart of Andrew's legacy. In my opinion, Steve Bannon is a bully, and has sold out Andrew's mission in order to back another bully, Donald Trump. He has shaped the company into Trump's personal Pravda. The facts are undeniable. Breitbart News has become precisely the reverse of what Andrew would have wanted. Steve Bannon and those who follow his lead should be ashamed of themselves. Okay, that looks pretty good today because that's exactly what it was. He turned it into Trump's personal Pravda. They denied this at the time. No. They ran a whole big piece about how I was a traitor to the cause for leaving and for pointing out that it's bad when publications don't back their own reporters out of personal loyalty to a political candidate. That makes them a propaganda outlet, not a news outlet. You know, Trump is not a conservative. Andrew knew Trump was not a conservative. He never would have provided the worshipful coverage of Donald Trump's nationalist populist agenda that Breitbart did. Andrew didn't like bullies. Trump is a bully. but obviously Bannon is too, so it doesn't really matter. Okay, so that's number one that you need to know about Bannon. Second, if you think Bannon is in this for Trump, he's not in it for Trump. He's in it for Bannon, okay? The way that Steve works, and just look at his political career, he became prominent when he did a really crappy documentary called Generation Zero. And it is. I mean, it's an egregiously bad documentary. It's the kind of documentary made by an amateur where you have a bunch of time-lapse photography to demonstrate drama, and you go black and white to demonstrate drama, and you have stock footage of clowns hitting each other. Really, this is the kind of thing that was in his film. He got some coverage for this. He got on Fox News. He was on Sean Hannity. He's friends with Sean. He began elevating his profile after he attached himself to Michelle Bachmann with another documentary called Fire from the Heartland. And then he did another documentary after he insinuated himself in with Sarah Palin. He made another crappy documentary called The Undefeated. And again, it's a really, really crappy documentary. But the point was, he was now associated with Sarah Palin. And this was now his calling card. Because Sarah Palin was a hot commodity in 2011, right? She's fresh off of the 2008 race. People were still big fans of Sarah Palin. This is before she sort of became a parody of herself. And Bannon attached himself to her and sort of rode her coattails and presumably kept telling her everything she was doing was wonderful until she became sort of the mockery that she's become. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Palin was the first Tea Partier to really endorse Trump. He began appearing on Fox News fairly regularly, and he met Andrew Breitbart. He gave Andrew Breitbart some office space, and he lent Andrew Breitbart the office space, which Andrew was grateful for. And then after Andrew died, Larry Solov, who was Andrew Breitbart's partner, decided, okay, I'm going to make Bannon the chairman of the company. There are a lot of people inside the company who I think were not, I was one of them. I was not happy that Bannon was made chairman of the company because I'd had experiences with Bannon before. But in any case, he made him chairman of the company. And things were fine for a while because Steve's a very smart guy. He's a bright guy. When the Trump campaign began, that's when things began to go sideways, because at that point it became clear that Steve, who was the guiding force at Breitbart now, had decided that it was very important that Trump be stumped for under virtually all circumstances. So it turned into Trump Pravda. He denied that it was turning into Trump Pravda, or if he didn't personally, I mean, he essentially did. But the website definitely tried to maintain this veneer of we're not Trump Pravda. And now, of course, it's clear they were Trump Pravda. In fact, half the staff is now moving over there. There's a report today that Matthew Boyle, their lead Washington reporter, is going to be working for Trump. Joel Pollack, who was the in-house counsel and former editor-in-chief, he had been trying to get a speechwriting job with Trump. Okay, so they're always very close. And it was all for Steve's personal self-aggrandizement. I also have some information from other sources. This is not from me. That the chief investors in Breitbart News are people called the Mercers. Robert Mercer is a hedge fund manager, and they gave an enormous amount of money to Ted Cruz. They started a super PAC for Ted Cruz, gave it a lot of money to the Ted Cruz super PAC. They're also the lead investors in Breitbart News. Well, as the campaign went on, other people who were spending money on the Cruz campaign went to the Mercer family, whose spokesperson was Kellyanne Conway, the new campaign manager for Trump, and they said to Kellyanne Conway and the Mercers, guys, what are you doing? You're spending like tens of millions of dollars on Cruz, and you also spent money on Breitbart. Why is your right hand fighting with your left hand? Why is Breitbart trying to take out Cruz and push Trump? And the Mercer family was telling people, no, Bannon isn't anti-Trump. They were telling people, no, Breitbart News isn't anti-Trump. Now, anyone who's watching Breitbart News knew that, or anti-Cruz. Everybody who's watching Breitbart News knew that it was a pro-Trump outlet at that point. But presumably, I mean, I can't imagine any other way the Mercers got this impression. Presumably, Bannon was telling them all the way through, it's not that we're pro-Trump. We're not. We're treating everybody equally. Okay, that's kind of bad stuff. Breitbart staff, as I mentioned, lusts after Trump involvement, which is important. Under Bannon's leadership, Breitbart also transferred into, in following Trump, they transferred into the sort of Milo Yiannopoulos, white supremacist, alt-right garbage version of the right wing. That has nothing to do with constitutional conservatism, and that, I think, is a betrayal of Andrew's memory. Also, it's worth noting, and here's where we get into the serious stuff. You know, I've speculated that this could be, for Steve, what's Steve's play? Well, I mean, play number one could be Trump wins, and now he's the chief of staff, and I have to go into hiding. That's play number one. Play number two is Trump loses, and at that point, Steve uses Trump and all of his newfound media connections who have become very loyal to Trump and builds a new network. And that's speculation, but Steve's a very smart guy, and I would imagine that he's thought along those lines because he doesn't like to enter scenarios where it's a win-lose, where he can lose. That's a no-lose scenario. If he wins, then he's in the White House. If he loses, then he gets to build this big new network and blame people like me for Trump losing, even though he was the one in charge of the failing Trump campaign. Okay, so a couple of important points here. And as I mentioned, I think that Bannon's a legitimately sinister figure. But there are some more important points than just Trump hiring sinister figures. He's hired sinister figures before. For goodness sake, he's hired Paul Manafort, who may be on the Kremlin's payroll. He's a very close relationship with Roger Stone, one of the sleaziest people in American politics. This would be nothing new. Here is where we get dicey. The place where we get dicey is the point that Trump tried to make the other day. So here's Donald Trump talking about how he's sick of the media donor political complex. And he's talking about the left here. Do we have this clip one?
Or some encrusted old politician says they oppose our campaign, or some big-time lobbyist says they oppose the campaign of Trump. I wear their opposition as a badge of honor. Because it means I'm fighting for real change, not just partisan change where everybody else gets rich but you. A rigged system. Remember it. I said it first. I'll probably be saying it for a long time. But eventually, we're going to break that system.
Media donor political class, right? He just hired the head of a major political website to run his campaign. Okay, Breitbart has built itself on the back of Trump. I mean, they went from like 30 million page views a month in like 2012, 2013 to now 200 million page views, largely on the back of Trumpism, largely on the back of Trump. And, you know, that's his prerogative, but it does give the lie to the idea that there's media corruption only on one side of the aisle. Because the fact is this, the Trump campaign has been claiming that there's this whole vast swath of media on the left who refuse to acknowledge their own bias and then go out there and stump for Democrats. That is 100% true. That is also exactly what Breitbart is. That's exactly what Breitbart has become. Breitbart was a propaganda outlet for Donald Trump. They refused to acknowledge it, and now they are part and parcel of the Trump campaign. And it's really nasty. It's really bad. Andrew Breitbart wrote large segments in his book, Righteous Indignation, about the evils of what he called the Democrat media complex. He said that was a really nasty thing to have these people working hand in glove. The idea was not to build a Trump media complex. That was not the idea, but that's exactly what Bannon has created here. And again, it demonstrates the corruption within conservatism, the lust for power that allows people to sell out their principles, and it really is quite ugly. Again, that may not be a bad move for Trump. So now that we've put all of that information aside, now that's all on the table, and I've tried to be objective as I can, and I'm admittedly not objective about this. Now that we've put that aside, now that we've said, you know, maybe Trump is capable of, maybe there's a good move for Trump, now I want to talk about good Trump. But for that, you're going to have to subscribe to Daily Wire because we're at the end of Facebook Live and YouTube. So go over to dailywire.com, become a subscriber. That allows you to see the rest of the show. It allows you to email me and get in the mailbag, which I'm sure will be very busy this week. dailywire.com for all the rest of that information. And you can obviously listen to the rest of the show on iTunes or SoundCloud a little bit later today. We are the #1 conservative podcast in America, so check us out at dailywire.com.